The stars looked different from the command deck of the Eternal Dominion. Fleet Commander Taman stood with his hands behind his back, watching the endless void through the massive viewing window. Behind him, 500 warships waited in perfect formation. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level a continent. Together, they were unstoppable. Taman had commanded fleets for 20 years. He had watched worlds burn and civilizations kneel. The Vorath supremacy had conquered 147 star systems, and not once had they faced real resistance. Lesser species always fell the same way. First came the shock. Then came the fear. Finally came the surrender. Earth would be no different. Lieutenant Heejin approached from the tactical station. Her uniform was crisp, her movements precise. She had served under Taman for 5 years and never questioned an order. Commander, all battle groups report ready. Weapons charged. Shields at maximum. We await your command. Taman nodded slowly. Through the window, he could see the faint glow of distant stars. Somewhere ahead, hidden in that darkness, was a small blue world called Earth. According to their scouts, humans had only reached space a century ago. They had primitive rockets and simple satellites. Their largest weapons were nuclear bombs that could barely scratch a Vorath shield. It would be like crushing an insect. What do we know about their defenses? Taman asked. Heejin pulled up a holographic display. Long-range scans detected approximately 40 military satellites in orbit around their homeworld. Several space stations. A small collection of mining operations on their moon and nearby asteroids. No capital ships. No battle stations. No planetary shields. And their population? 8 billion, scattered across a single planet. They have not colonized any other worlds in their system. Taman allowed himself a small smile. 8 billion lives, all trapped on one fragile world. High Command had made the right choice. A species this vulnerable, this concentrated, posed no real threat now. But in 100 years, 200, they might spread. They might grow strong. Better to control them now, while it was easy. The door to the command deck slid open. Admiral Daehyun entered, his face carved with deep lines. He was older than Taman by 15 years, and had seen more battles than anyone else in the fleet. Unlike the others, Daehyun did not look confident. "Commander," Daehyun said quietly. "A word in private?" Taman frowned but gestured to a side chamber. The two officers stepped inside, and the door sealed behind them. Through the transparent walls, the crew continued their work, unaware of the conversation. "What concerns you, Admiral?" Taman asked. Daehyun activated a small data pad. 3 weeks ago, our advanced scouts passed through this system. They remained at the edge, undetected, and collected long-range sensor data. The report was filed, but I don't think High Command read it carefully. "I read it myself," Taman said. 40 satellites, primitive orbital platforms, nothing that poses a threat. "That's what the summary said," Daehyun agreed. "But I reviewed the raw sensor data. There are anomalies. Thousands of them." Taman's frown deepened. "Explain." Daehyun expanded the hologram. It showed the Sol system in detail. Earth sat in the center, surrounded by its moon and neighboring planets, but scattered throughout the system, from the inner planets to the outer asteroid belt, were thousands of small markers. "These are energy signatures," Daehyun said. "We don't know what they are. They're too small to be ships, too numerous to be satellites. They don't match any known technology." "Then they're sensor ghosts," Taman said dismissively. "Background radiation, cosmic interference, perhaps," Daehyun said. "But they're arranged in patterns, defensive patterns. And when our scout ship moved closer to investigate, they moved too. They tracked us." For the first time, Taman felt a flicker of unease. He stared at the hologram, at the thousands of tiny dots scattered across the system like stars in a night sky. High Command was informed? Quote, "They dismissed it." They said a primitive species couldn't possibly have deployed thousands of platforms without us detecting construction. They assumed the sensors malfunctioned. End quote. These one panter. They assumed the sensors malfunctioned. They assumed the sensors malfunctioned. And what do you assume? Daehyun met his eyes. I assume we're missing something important. I recommend we approach cautiously. Send a delegation. Open communication channels. If they are hostile, we destroy them. But if they are simply afraid, we can avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Taemin considered this. Daehyun was a careful officer, not prone to paranoia. If he was concerned, there might be reason. But High Command had already issued orders. The Vorath did not negotiate with primitives. They conquered, or they controlled. Showing caution would be seen as weakness. Your concerns are noted, Admiral, Taemin said. But our orders are clear. We will emerge at their moon, demand surrender, and demonstrate our strength if they refuse. Standard protocol. Daehyun's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He simply nodded and left the chamber. Taemin returned to the command deck. At her station, Specialist Ji-won was monitoring communication frequencies. She wore a headset and stared at scrolling data streams. Her job was to intercept enemy transmissions, decode military communications, and provide tactical intelligence. But when Taemin approached, she looked uncomfortable. Something to report, Specialist? He asked. Ji-won hesitated. I've been monitoring Earth's broadcasts, Commander. Their communication networks are open, unencrypted. I can hear everything. And they're not preparing for war. They're just living. I can hear music, news broadcasts, entertainment programs. There are children laughing, families talking. They don't know we're coming. Taemin felt a strange tightness in his chest. He pushed it away. Sentiment was weakness. They'll know soon enough. Return to your station. Ji-won nodded and turned back to her console. But Taemin saw her hand tremble slightly. He returned to the viewing window and stared at the stars. In a few hours, the fleet would jump to light speed. They would cross the distance to Earth in minutes. They would arrive with overwhelming force and deliver High Command's ultimatum: surrender or die. It was a speech Taemin had given dozens of times. Every species heard the same words. Every species made the same choice. Resistance was suicide. But as he stood there, surrounded by 500 warships and thousands of soldiers ready to fight, Taemin couldn't shake Admiral Daehyun's words. What if they were missing something? He pushed the thought away. The Vorath were the greatest military power in the galaxy. Earth was a single world with primitive technology and no defenses worth mentioning. What could they possibly have that would threaten the Vorath supremacy? All ships, Taemin announced across the fleet-wide channel, prepare for jump, target, Sol system, lunar orbit. We arrive in 1 hour. Victory is inevitable. Glory to the Vorath. 500 ships roared their approval. The fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives and vanished into the darkness, hurtling toward Earth at speeds that defied physics. None of them knew they had less than 60 seconds to live. Number. Part 2. First contact. Final mistake. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 500 warships materialized around Earth's moon, like ghosts becoming solid. The transition was flawless. Not a single vessel was out of position. Commander Taemin gripped the railing of his command deck and stared at the blue planet hanging in the darkness. It was beautiful. Swirling white clouds, deep blue oceans, green and brown continents. From this distance, it looked peaceful, fragile, defenseless. All ships confirm position. Lieutenant Heejin reported from her station. Formation holding. No hostile response detected. We have achieved complete surprise. Taemin nodded. Of course they had. Humanity's primitive sensors probably didn't even know the fleet was here yet. He had emerged deliberately close to their moon, within visual range of their homeworld. When they finally noticed, the sight would break their spirit. "Open all communication channels," Taman commanded. "Broadcast the ultimatum in all known languages. Give them 10 minutes to respond." The communications officer activated the system. Taman's voice boomed across every frequency humanity used. Radio, laser, quantum. The message was simple and clear. "People of Earth, I am Fleet Commander Taman of the Vorath Supremacy. You are hereby ordered to surrender your world and submit to Vorath authority. Disarm all military forces. Provide complete planetary access. Accept our terms without resistance. You have 10 minutes to comply. Refusal will result in the destruction of your largest population centers. This is your only warning." The message repeated in 200 different languages. Taman had delivered the same speech 40 times before. Sometimes, civilizations tried to negotiate. Sometimes, they begged. Sometimes they attacked in desperate futility. But they always fell. 3 seconds passed. A response came through the communication system. A human voice. Female. Calm. Speaking perfect Vorath, without hesitation or error. "Unknown vessels. You have entered Soul Defense Perimeter. Power down all weapon systems immediately, and state your peaceful intentions. If you do not comply, defensive protocols will engage automatically. This is your only warning." The command deck fell silent. Lieutenant Hagen blinked in surprise. "They're threatening us?" Weapons Officer Mincio laughed out loud. "Defensive protocols? They have 40 satellites, and we have 500 warships. Do they think they can frighten us?" Several other officers joined the laughter. Even Taman allowed himself a cold smile. The audacity was almost admirable. Primitives always had courage, even when it was foolish. "Scan their defenses," Taman ordered. "Show me what they think will stop us." Hagen's fingers danced across her console. The holographic display updated, showing Earth and its immediate orbit. 40 satellites appeared as red dots. Several space stations glowed faintly. A handful of small ships drifted near the moon's surface. "That's everything?" Taman asked. "Everything our sensors detect, Commander. Their largest weapon platform generates less power than our smallest escort ship. Their space stations are unarmed civilian facilities. They have nothing that can threaten us." "Then they're bluffing," Minseo said. "Buying time. Hoping we'll lose our nerve." But Admiral Daehyun was not laughing. He stood at the sensor station, his face pale. His hands moved frantically across the controls, adjusting frequencies and boosting scan resolution. "Commander," Daehyun said quietly, "I'm detecting the anomalies. The same ones from the scout report." Taman's smile faded. "Explain." Daehyun expanded the tactical display. Suddenly, the hologram filled with thousands of small dots. They surrounded Earth like a cloud. They filled the space between planets. They drifted through the asteroid belt. They were everywhere. "What are those?" Heejin whispered. "Unknown," Daehyun said. "They don't match any known technology. They're generating minimal power, almost invisible to standard scans. But they're there. Thousands of them." "How many thousands?" Taman demanded. Daehyun's voice was hollow. "At least 17,000 individual signatures. Possibly more. They're small. Each one is roughly the size of a cargo container. But they're moving, adjusting position. They're surrounding us." The laughter on the command deck died instantly. Taman stared at the display. 17,000. That was more than 30 times the size of his fleet. But they were tiny. What could something so small possibly do? "Are they weapons platforms?" he asked. "I don't know," Daehyun admitted. "They're not radiating weapon signatures. No lasers charging. No missile locks. They're just there." Specialist Jiwon suddenly gasped at her station. "Commander, I'm detecting massive quantum activity. It's coming from all around us." The entire system is lighting up. Explain. Taman snapped. Something is activating. All of those signatures. They're powering up simultaneously. I've never seen anything like this. The energy readings are... Alarms screamed across the command deck. Every tactical display flashed red. Warning messages cascaded across the screens faster than anyone could read them. Threat indicators appeared by the thousands. We have target lock, Hagen shouted. Multiple target locks. Thousands of them. All ships are being painted. Evasive maneuvers, Taman roared. All ships scatter. But it was already too late. Minseo had been waiting for this moment. The instant the alarm sounded, he made his decision. He would show these primitives what real power looked like. His hands moved across the weapons console. Targeting Earth's largest city, he announced. Tokyo. Population 38 million. Firing in 3 seconds. Wait! Daehyun shouted, but Minseo had already pressed the trigger. The Time's Eternal Dominion's Time's main cannon charged. Power surged through the weapon systems. The target lock was solid. In 5 seconds, Tokyo would cease to exist. In that same moment, every one of the 17,000 platforms surrounding the fleet activated. Specialist Jiwon's console exploded with data. They're launching. All of them. Thousands of projectiles inbound. Hagen's voice cracked with panic. Impact in 15 seconds. Point defenses engaging. Shields at maximum. Taman grabbed the railing and stared at the tactical display. The 17,000 platforms weren't platforms at all. They were weapons. Autonomous weapons. And they had just fired. What are they shooting? He demanded. Daehyun checked the sensors. His face went white. Kinetic projectiles. Tungsten rods. Accelerated to 0.95 light speed. The command deck went silent, except for the screaming alarms. 0.95 light speed. That was impossible. Accelerating mass to that velocity required power plants the size of stars. No species had ever achieved weaponized relativistic kinetics. The math worked in theory, but the energy requirements were absurd, and yet the sensors didn't lie. Thousands of tungsten rods, each weighing several tons, were screaming toward the fleet at nearly the speed of light. Nothing could stop them. No shield in the galaxy could deflect physical matter moving that fast. The kinetic energy alone would be catastrophic. All ships! Emergency jump! Taman screamed into the fleet channel. Jump now. Anywhere. Just jump. But faster than light drives needed time to charge. 30 seconds minimum. They didn't have 30 seconds. They had 5. Through the viewing window, Taman saw the first impact. The battleship times Conqueror's Fist, *, the pride of the 4th Fleet, exploded. A tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole struck it dead center. The kinetic impact released energy equivalent to 100 nuclear bombs. The ship simply disintegrated. Metal vaporized. Shields collapsed. 30,000. Vorath died in an instant. Then the second impact hit. And the third. And the fourth. Across the fleet, capital ships exploded like fireworks. Destroyers split in half. Cruisers became clouds of debris. The carefully arranged formation turned into a graveyard in seconds. Shields holding, Heejin screamed. But we're taking impacts. Portside hull breach. Engines damaged. Return fire, Minseo shouted desperately. Target those platforms. There's too many, someone screamed. The Time's Eternal Dominion Times shuddered. Taman was thrown against the railing. Sparks exploded from control consoles. The lights flickered. Through the window, he watched his fleet die. And then he understood. Humanity hadn't bluffed. They had warned him. Part 3. 60 seconds of annihilation. The tactical display showed the fleet dying in real time. Each red dot represented a warship. Each time a dot vanished, thousands of Vorath vanished with it. The dots were disappearing faster than Commander Taman could count. 15 seconds had passed since the platforms activated. The Time's Eternal Dominion Times shook violently. Another impact. The shields were failing. Taman could hear the hull, groaning under stress. Metal screamed. Somewhere deep in the ship, secondary explosions echoed through the corridors. Engineering reports engine failure, Lieutenant Hagen shouted over the chaos. We cannot jump. Repeat. We cannot jump to light speed. Deploy all countermeasures. Weapons Officer Minseo screamed. His console was on fire, but he kept working. Chaff. Decoys. Everything. The ship launched defensive systems, clouds of metallic particles. False sensor readings. Holographic projections. All the technology the Vorath had developed over centuries of warfare. None of it mattered. The tungsten rods didn't track heat signatures. They didn't follow energy emissions. They didn't chase decoys. Each projectile had been fired at a precise vector, calculated by artificial intelligence that predicted where each ship would be. The Vorath weren't fighting pilots. They were fighting math. 20 seconds. Through the viewing window, Taman watched the carrier times. Endless victory times break apart. It was the largest ship in the fleet. 10 kilometers long. Heavily armored. Protected by shields that could withstand sustained bombardment for hours. 3 tungsten rods hit it simultaneously. The ship folded in the middle like paper. The reactor containment failed. A flash of blue-white light filled space as antimatter met matter. When the light faded, nothing remained but expanding vapor. We've lost contact with battle groups 3, 7, and 12. Hagen reported. Total casualties estimated at 200,000 and rising. 200,000 dead in 20 seconds. Admiral De Yun stood frozen at his station. His worst fears had come true. He had warned them. He had seen the evidence. But High Command had dismissed it. And now, everyone was paying the price. How are they tracking us? Taman demanded. How do they know where we'll be? Daehyun didn't take his eyes off his display. Predictive algorithms. They mapped our formation, calculated our likely evasive patterns. Every maneuver we make has already been anticipated. 8T. They're not reacting to us, Commander. They fired everything before we even moved. They knew where we'd go. That's impossible. It's artificial intelligence. Perfect mathematical prediction. No hesitation. No doubt. Just cold calculation. 25 seconds. The defensive platforms weren't done. New signatures appeared on the sensors. Different weapons this time. Laser arrays hidden on the lunar surface activated. Hundreds of them. They created intersecting beams of coherent light across space. Any ship that crossed a beam was cut apart. The destroyer times Pride of Vorath times flew directly into the grid. Lasers sliced through its shields like they didn't exist. The ship was carved into pieces. Atmosphere vented. Bodies tumbled into space. The pieces continued drifting forward, propelled by momentum, until they collided with debris from other destroyed vessels. Shields at 15%, someone screamed. Hull breaches on decks 9 through 14. Medical reports mass casualties. We're venting atmosphere. The reports cascaded in. Each one brought worse news. The Times, Eternal Dominion Times, was dying. The entire fleet was dying. And there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. 30 seconds. Specialist Jiwon worked frantically at her console. She had to get a message out. Someone had to know what happened here. If the entire fleet was destroyed, High Command would send another. And another. And another. They had to know the truth. She activated a message probe. A small device designed to survive anything and carry information across light years. Her hands shook as she recorded everything. The platforms, the weapons, the speed of the attack, the complete annihilation of 500 warships. Message probe ready, she shouted. Launching now. A small port opened on the hull. The probe ejected into space and immediately engaged its emergency jump drive. It vanished. heading back toward Voreth space. It was the only thing that would escape Sol's system alive. 35 seconds. New warnings flashed. Railgun signatures. Hundreds of them. Hidden throughout the asteroid belt. Massive weapons mounted on captured asteroids, accelerating projectiles to incredible speeds. They built weapons on asteroids? Mincio whispered in disbelief. How long did this take? How much resources? This isn't a defense network. This is a fortress. The entire system is weaponized. Admiral Daehyun finally understood. 50 years ago, according to the intelligence reports, Earth had been hit by an asteroid swarm. A natural disaster. Billions had died. Their civilization nearly collapsed. They had survived. And they had made sure it would never happen again. They had turned their entire star system into a weapon pointed outward. Not to attack, not to conquer, but to ensure that nothing, not asteroids, not comets, and not alien fleets, would ever threaten their homeworld again. The Vorath had walked into a trap designed for extinction-level threats. And the trap had closed. 40 seconds. Taemin gripped the railing so hard his hands ached. He watched ship after ship die. The fleet that had seemed invincible minutes ago was scattered debris. Of 500 warships, maybe 50 remained, and they were all damaged. "Can anyone jump?" he asked hoarsely. Heijin checked the fleet status. 12 ships report functional jump drives, but they need time to charge. 3 minutes minimum. "They don't have 3 minutes," Daehyun said quietly. He was right. The platforms were still firing. New projectiles screamed through space. The laser grid intensified. The railguns added their firepower. Every weapon humanity had built was focused on eliminating the threat. And the Vorath were the threat. 45 seconds. Taemin made his decision. He activated the fleet-wide channel. His voice was steady, despite everything falling apart around him. "All ships. This is Commander Taemin. Cease fire. Power down all weapons. Surrender protocols." A tungsten rod pierced the command deck. It entered through the ceiling and exited through the floor in less than a heartbeat. The kinetic energy was so extreme that everything in its path simply ceased to exist. Matter was converted to superheated plasma. Commander Taemin had just enough time to see the projectile coming. Then he was gone. Lieutenant Heijin died next to him, her hand still reaching for the console. Weapons Officer Min Seo never even saw it coming. Admiral Daehyun, standing 3 meters away, was thrown across the deck by the shockwave. The last thing he saw was the viewing window shattering. Then the vacuum took him. 50 seconds. Specialist Jiwon was in a sealed communication booth when the rod hit. The booth's emergency systems activated. The walls reinforced. The air supply engaged. She survived. She was one of the only ones who did. Through the booth's small window, she watched the Time's eternal Dominion Times tear itself apart. Secondary explosions rippled through the hull. The engines detonated. The reactor went critical. The flagship of the Vorath supremacy, the pride of their military, the ship that had never been damaged in 200 battles, died in a cascade of fire and metal. Jiwon closed her eyes and waited for the end. 55 seconds. The 12 ships with functional jump drives made their attempt. They poured every remaining ounce of power into their engines. They had to escape. They had to warn the others. The drives charged. Space warped around them. For a moment, it looked like they would make it. But the Aegis had calculated their jump vectors. Small, fast drones, detached from the defensive platforms. They accelerated to impossible speeds and positioned themselves directly in the path of each fleeing ship. When the Vorath vessels jumped to light speed, they collided with the drones. At faster-than-light velocities, even a small impact was catastrophic. The ships didn't just explode, they briefly became miniature stars, releasing energy that outshone the sun for a fraction of a second. Then they were gone. 60 seconds. Silence fell across the Sol system. Where 500 warships had been, only debris remained. Millions of tons of twisted metal. Frozen bodies. scattered weapons, emergency beacons crying out for help that would never come. The defensive platforms powered down. They returned to standby mode. Their job was complete. On Earth's surface, 8 billion humans continued their lives. Most of them had no idea anything had happened. A few astronomers noticed the brief flashes of light near the moon. Some dismissed it as meteorites. Others wondered if it was something more. But the defense network didn't report to civilians. It reported to military command. And military command was very, very concerned about what they would do next. Part 4. The message. 3 weeks later, the message probe arrived at Vorath High Command. Grand Admiral Seo-jun was reviewing supply reports when his aide rushed into the chamber. The young officer's face was pale, his hands shaking as he held a data tablet. "Sir," the aide stammered. "Emergency signal from Seoul Sector. It's a probe from the Earth invasion fleet." Seo-jun frowned. The fleet should have conquered Earth by now. They should be sending victory reports, not emergency probes. He took the tablet and activated it. Specialist Ji-won's face appeared on the screen. She was still in her communication booth, surrounded by broken equipment and flickering lights. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. Behind her, through the small window, Seo-jun could see the twisted wreckage of the command deck. "This is Specialist Ji-won of the Times Eternal Dominion *", she said. Her voice was hollow, empty. "I am recording this message 40 minutes after entering the Sol system. I am the only survivor on this ship. I may be the only survivor in the entire fleet." In the Sol, Seo-jun's blood went cold. "I am transmitting all sensor data," Ji-won continued. "Everything we recorded. High Command needs to see this. Earth is not what we thought. They are not primitive. They are not defenseless. And they just destroyed 500 of our finest warships in less than 60 seconds. The recording cut to sensor footage. Seo-jun watched in growing horror as the fleet emerged near Earth's moon. He saw the platforms activate. He saw the tungsten rods launched at near light speed. He watched ships he had served on, ships he had helped design, explode like toys. He watched the entire Vorath armada die. When the recording ended, Seo-jun sat in silence for a long moment. Then, he activated the emergency council signal. Within minutes, every member of the War Council was assembled in the chamber. Councillor Yuna arrived first. She was the one who had authorized the Earth invasion. She had called it a minor pacification operation that would be completed in days. Now she stared at the sensor recordings with an expression of pure shock. "This can't be real," she whispered. 500 ships. Gone. In 1 minute. It's real. Chief Strategist Junho said grimly. He had been analyzing the data since arriving. "The humans have constructed an automated defense network unlike anything we've encountered. 17,000 weapons platforms. All controlled by artificial intelligence. No hesitation. No fear. Just pure tactical efficiency." "How did we not detect this?" Yuna demanded. "We did," Seo-jun said quietly. Admiral Daehyun filed a report. He saw the anomalies. He recommended caution. His concerns were dismissed. The chamber fell silent. Everyone there had read that report. Everyone had dismissed it. They had assumed a primitive species couldn't possibly pose a threat. What were their capabilities? Councillor Heijin asked. She was responsible for military technology. Understanding enemy weapons was her specialty. Junho brought up detailed analysis. Kinetic weapons. Accelerated to 0.95 light speed. Laser arrays powerful enough to cut through our best shields. Railguns firing from hidden positions throughout the asteroid belt. And predictive AI that calculated our movements before we made them. Predictive AI? Heijin repeated. That's theoretical technology. We've been trying to develop it for decades. Apparently humans succeeded, Junho said, and they deployed it as a defensive system. Our fleet never had a chance. Every maneuver was anticipated. Every evasive pattern was predicted. They weren't fighting us. They were executing an equation. Seo-jun activated another section of the recording. There's more. Watch this. The footage showed the moment Commander Taemin broadcast his ultimatum. His voice rang out, demanding surrender, threatening destruction. Then came Earth's response. The calm female voice, warning them to power down weapons. They gave us a chance, Seo-jun said. They detected us. Immediately. They could have fired without warning. But they gave us time to back down. And we fired on them, Yuna whispered. Junho nodded. Weapons Officer Minseo achieved target lock on Tokyo, population 38 million. The moment he did, the entire defense network activated. The humans built their system with automatic protocols. Any hostile action triggers immediate response. It's not controlled by people. It's controlled by machines programmed with one objective: protect Earth at all costs. We triggered their system, Heijin said. We made ourselves the threat. Translator Sora had been silent until now. She was elderly. Having served the Vorath for 50 years, she had translated communications from 100 different species. Now, she activated her own tablet. There's something else, she said. Something worse. She played another recording. This one was time-stamped just seconds before the battle began. It was an Earth transmission, responding to Taemin's ultimatum. A human voice spoke. Male. Warm. Speaking accented but clear Vorath. Greetings, unknown vessels. We received your message. We are willing to discuss peaceful contact and cultural exchange. We understand. First contact can be complicated. Please hold your position and power down your weapons while we dispatch diplomatic representatives. We are preparing a delegation now. Estimated arrival time is 40 minutes. We are excited to meet you. Assisting. The chamber went silent. They were sending diplomats, Yuna breathed. They were willing to talk. They didn't know Commander Taemin had already decided to demonstrate force, Seo-jun said heavily. Their message was still transmitting when Weapons Officer Minseo locked onto Tokyo. The defense network, activated before the human diplomats, even received Taemin's ultimatum. Sora continued. I've analyzed all of Earth's communications during the battle. They broadcasted emergency warnings in every language they know. They tried to tell our ships to power down. They tried to stop the slaughter. But by then, the automated systems had already engaged. So the humans wanted peace, Heijin said slowly. And we came with threats. We fired first. And their machines defended them. Junho pulled up population data. Earth lost approximately 1,200 people in the battle. All of them were on military installations that returned fire. The human homeworld itself was untouched. 8 billion people down there continued their lives, probably unaware of what happened. How many of ours died? Counselor Barum asked quietly. Seo-jun didn't need to check the data. He had memorized it. 473,000. 16,000 on the Times Eternal Dominion times, alone. All of battle groups 3, 7, and 12. The entire First Fleet. Gone. The number hung in the air like a weight. This is the worst military disaster in Vorath history, Yuna said. Her voice was barely a whisper. And it was our fault. We attacked a peaceful species. We threatened their children. And their machines defended them. What do we do now? Barum asked. Do we send another fleet? Avenge our dead? No, Seo-jun said immediately. Absolutely not. Did you see what those weapons did? We send another fleet. We lose another fleet. We could send every ship we have and the result would be the same. You can't fight mathematics. You can't intimidate artificial intelligence. All we would do is waste more lives. Then what? Yuna demanded. We just accept this? 500 ships destroyed? And we do nothing? We do the only thing we can, Seo-jun said. We apologize. The chamber erupted in protest. Apologize? The Vorath supremacy did not apologize. They were conquerors. They were powerful. Showing weakness would invite attack from their enemies. But Seojun raised his hand for silence. "We made a mistake," he said firmly. "A catastrophic mistake. We attacked without provocation. We threatened civilians. We ignored warnings. And we paid the price. But Earth didn't follow up. They didn't chase our probe. They didn't send ships to attack our territory. They destroyed our fleet, and then stopped. Do you understand what that means?" Junho nodded slowly. "They don't want war." "Exactly," Seojun said. "They built those weapons to defend themselves, not to conquer others. If they wanted to attack, they would have already. But they're waiting, watching, hoping we'll be smart enough to choose peace. And if we're not?" Heijin asked. Seojun looked at each council member in turn. "Then, we'll lose more than ships. We'll lose everything. Because a species that can destroy 500 warships in 60 seconds can certainly destroy a homeworld. And if we push them, they might decide we're too dangerous to leave alive." The truth of it settled over the chamber like a shroud. "I'm going to Earth," Seojun announced. "I will apologize personally. I will beg for mercy if necessary. And I will offer peace. Because the alternative is extinction." Nobody argued. 3 days later, Grand Admiral Seojun departed for Sol System in an unarmed diplomatic vessel. In the cargo hold, he carried gifts. Art, music, technology, everything the Vorath could offer. But mostly, he carried hope that humanity would listen. Part 5. Humanity's Answer. Ambassador Nari had never been so terrified in her life. She stood in the center of the United Earth Council chamber in Geneva, surrounded by representatives from every human nation. The room was beautiful. Tall windows let in natural sunlight. The walls were decorated with art from a dozen different cultures. Fresh flowers sat on the tables. It looked nothing like a war room. It looked like a place where people discussed peace, but Nari knew what humans were capable of. She had seen the recordings. She had studied the sensor data from the battle. These peaceful-looking people had built weapons that could shatter fleets, and now she stood before them. Representing the species that had tried to conquer them, she knelt. It was not a Vorath custom. Her people did not kneel. But Grand Admiral Seojun had insisted. Show humility. Show remorse. Show that the Vorath understood they had made a terrible mistake. Secretary General Kang sat at the head of the council table. He was an older man, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been in office during the asteroid impact 50 years ago. He had watched 2 billion people die. He had helped rebuild civilization from the ashes, and now he was the one who would decide the Vorath's fate. "Ambassador Nari," Kang said. His voice was gentle. "Please stand. We don't require you to kneel." Nari rose slowly, but kept her eyes lowered. "Secretary General, I come, on behalf of the Vorath supremacy, to offer our deepest apologies. We attacked without provocation. We threatened your people. You caused the deaths of 1,237 people," a woman's voice said. Nari looked up. Defense Coordinator Hana stood near a wall display showing the battle. She was younger than Kang, maybe 40 years old, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Military personnel," Hana continued. "Station operators, sensor technicians. People doing their jobs. They died because our automated systems identified your fleet as an extinction-level threat and responded accordingly." "I understand," Nari said quietly. "And for their deaths, we are deeply sorry. The Vorath accept full responsibility." "Do you know why our system classified you as an extinction-level threat?" Hana asked. Nari shook her head. Hana activated the display. It showed Earth, beautiful and blue. Then it showed a different image. Earth covered in dust clouds, oceans on fire, continents shattered. 50 years ago, Hana said, an asteroid swarm hit Earth. We didn't see it coming. Our detection systems were primitive. By the time we noticed, it was too late. The impacts killed 2 billion people in the first hour. Another billion died in the months that followed from starvation and disease. Nari had read about this in the intelligence reports, but seeing the images made it real. She saw burning cities, refugee camps, mass graves. We almost went extinct, Hana continued. Humanity came within days of complete collapse. We survived through cooperation, sacrifice, and sheer determination. And when it was over, when we buried our dead and rebuilt our cities, we made a promise. Never again. She changed the display. Now it showed the defensive platforms. Thousands of them. Silent and waiting in the darkness. We built the Aegis, Hana said. An automated defense network designed to detect and eliminate any threat to Earth. Asteroids, comets, hostile fleets, anything that might endanger our homeworld. We gave it one simple instruction: protect Earth at all costs. And we triggered it, Nari whispered. Yes, Hana said. Your fleet achieved weapons lock on Tokyo. 38 million people. The Aegis calculated that you intended to demonstrate force by destroying a city. So it defended us. It did exactly what we designed it to do. Kang leaned forward. Ambassador Nari, why did your people come to attack us? Nari had prepared for this question. Grand Admiral So-jun had been very clear. Tell the truth. No lies. No excuses. We came because you were vulnerable, Nari admitted. The Vorath have conquered 147 star systems. Our strategy has always been to subjugate younger species before they become threats. Your civilization was concentrated on a single world. You had no colonies. No deep space fleet. You seemed easy. So you came to conquer us before we could defend ourselves, Kang said. Yes. And now? Now we understand we were wrong. About everything. You aren't vulnerable. You aren't defenseless. And you definitely aren't easy. Several human representatives smiled at that. Nari wasn't sure if that was a good sign or not. Ambassador, Kang said. I want to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. What did you expect to find here? When you came to Earth? Nari considered the question. We expected fear, panic, maybe desperate resistance. We expected you to beg, or fight, or surrender. What we didn't expect was for all of you to survive the battle without even knowing it happened. Most people didn't know, Hana confirmed. The battle happened in space. Our cities were never threatened, because the Aegis eliminated the threat before it got close. A few astronomers saw the flashes. Some wondered if it was something unusual. But mostly, people continued living their lives. Because that's what the Aegis allows them to do. Your people built weapons powerful enough to destroy fleets, Nari said slowly. But you built them in space so your cities could remain peaceful. You could have militarized your entire planet, built weapons everywhere, turned your world into a fortress, but you didn't. We didn't want to live in a fortress, Kang said. We wanted our children to play in parks. We wanted our cities to be beautiful. We wanted to remain human. So we put the weapons far away where they wouldn't define who we are. But you're still willing to use them? To defend ourselves? Absolutely. But only to defend. We've never sent the Aegis to attack another world. We've never used our weapons for conquest. And we never will. Nari felt something shift in her understanding. The Vorath had always believed that power meant conquest. That strength meant control. But humans had incredible power, and chose not to use it. For expansion. They had built weapons that could shatter empires, and they used them only to protect gardens. What happens now? Nari asked. To my people. To the Vorath. Kang looked around the chamber. The other representatives nodded. It seemed they had already discussed this. We have two options to offer you, Kang said. First, you can leave. Return to your space. We'll provide you with complete, technical specifications of the Aegis. Show your leaders what we're capable of. Hopefully, they'll choose to leave us alone. We won't pursue you. We won't attack. We simply want peace. And the second option? You stay. Learn. We teach you how to build defensive systems like ours. In exchange, you agree to a mutual protection pact. We defend you if someone attacks. You defend us. No conquest. No subjugation. Just cooperation. Nari stared at him in disbelief. You would give us your technology? After we tried to destroy you? We would share our defensive technology, Hana corrected. Not weapons for attacking. But yes. Because we believe other species deserve to protect themselves too. We believe that security shouldn't require conquest. And we believe that peace is possible when everyone feels safe. You're offering us the same protection you give yourselves, Nari said slowly. As equals. As partners, Kang said. If you want it. Nari thought about the 500 ships. The 473,000 dead. The disaster that had brought her here. She thought about the Vorath supremacy, built on conquest and control. And she thought about Earth, a single world that had nearly died, survived, and chose to build defenses instead of empires. I will bring your offer to High Command, Nari said. But I believe they will accept. We've learned that conquest doesn't work against you. Perhaps it's time we learned that cooperation might work better. Good, Kang said, smiling. Then let me introduce you to someone. A young woman entered the chamber. She was in her 30s, dressed in diplomatic attire, carrying a small bag. She bowed respectfully to Nari. This is Ambassador Taeyong, Kang said. She's volunteered to return with you to Vorath space. To speak with your leaders directly. To help establish peaceful relations. Nari looked at Taeyong. There was sadness in her eyes. Old grief. You lost someone, Nari said. In the asteroid impact, I lost everyone. Taeyong said quietly. My parents, my siblings, my entire city. I was at university on the other side of the planet. I survived by chance. And you're still willing to come to Vorath space? To help us? Yes. Taeyong said. Because I know what it's like to lose everything. I know what desperation feels like. And I know that building walls doesn't bring people back. But building bridges might prevent others from dying. 3 months later, Ambassador Taeyong stood before the Vorath High Command. The chamber was packed. Every important Vorath leader was present. They had all seen the recordings. They had all counted the dead. Taeyong had spent the journey learning everything about Vorath culture. She spoke their language fluently now. She understood their history. And she knew what to say. Grand Admiral Seojun asked me to come here to deliver a message from Earth, she began. She looked at each council member. 50 years ago, rocks from space nearly killed us all. We survived, but we were broken. We could have responded with fear. We could have built weapons everywhere, made our world a military base, lived in constant preparation for war, but we chose differently. We built the Aegis so our children could play in gardens instead of bunkers. We built defenses so strong that we could remain peaceful. We built weapons so powerful that we would never have to use them. And then you came, and we had to use them. And people died. Your people. Our people. All of it was tragedy. All of it was waste. But here's what Earth wants you to know. We don't want revenge. We don't want tribute. We don't want your surrender. We want the same thing we've always wanted. To be left alone, to live our lives in peace. But we're willing to offer more than that. We're willing to share our defensive technology with you and anyone else who wants it. We're willing to help you protect yourselves. Because we believe that security shouldn't require conquest. We believe that feeling safe shouldn't mean making others afraid. The Aegis destroyed your fleet in 60 seconds. But we didn't build it to threaten you. We built it so we could remain us. Peaceful. Creative. Free. So here's Earth's message. Come in peace, and we'll welcome you as friends. Come with weapons, and you'll face the machines. But the choice has always been yours. The Aegis only responds to threats. Don't be a threat, and you'll never have to fear it. The chamber was silent. Then Grand Admiral Seojun stood. Slowly, he bowed. It was the first time a Vorath military leader had bowed to anyone in 300 years. On behalf of the Vorath supremacy, he said, we accept Earth's offer. We choose peace. 20 years passed. The Sol Defense Pact grew to 17 member species. The Aegis network was replicated across a dozen homeworlds. Not a single war of aggression occurred in that entire region of space, and Earth remained what it had always been: a garden world, largely peaceful, protected by silent guardians in the dark. The children still played in parks. The cities remained beautiful. Humanity had proven that the greatest strength wasn't the power to destroy, but the wisdom to defend without conquering. The Vorath learned. Others learned. And slowly, the galaxy became a little safer for everyone.